I am so happy with how this looks for the Rangers. We have a pitcher, Jack Leiter, and he is a dude.
And while I do think his hitting is worse than Derek Jeter, it's not that far off.
You're not mentioning 2006. You can mention the other people, not 2006.
Oh, just because I bought the best soap doesn't mean your room's going to be clean. It just leaves it to where I don't believe that the Canadians had a shot.
I really don't like the Clippers just kind of sending it in when they're like...
Hi, this is Kelly Forbes with the Dallas Stars, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NHL Opinions of the Week. We're going to be talking a little bit about the playoff format, and I don't remember how I introduced him in the first time we tried this. It was cut off because of Wi-Fi, but of course, my co-host, and we'll just insert another title as I do not remember what I said before. Austin.
Yeah, Kevin, that was weird. 2 days ago, we tried to record this, but obviously due to technical difficulties, we were unable to record, and we had to record a different video in a Starbucks parking lot. So, hey, whatever gets it done, whatever keeps the streak alive.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't a Starbucks parking lot, but it was a place that had Wi-Fi, and if you looked into my car, you would see the man in the back seat recording a podcast, but it was fun. The thing I'm sad about is we were having a great discussion, and then it just went blank, and it took me a little bit to figure out, oh, yeah, my Wi-Fi is out. So I'll turn it over back to you to kind of restart this conversation.
So this is a conversation, obviously, like you said before, regarding the NHL playoff schedule or like how the teams match up. So right now in the West, if you just go by like NBA seeding, but you look at the matchups, it'd be the 1 Stars versus the 8 Vegas, the 2 Jets versus the 4 Avalanche, the 5 Oilers versus the 7 Kings, and the 3 Canucks versus 6 Predators. This means in the West, and this is also in the East, that the 1 and 2, if they win their respective series, would play against each other in the second round, either Stars versus Jets or Rangers versus Hurricanes. Kevin, how do you feel about those matchups? It's definitely not what you would want as a player.
I don't know if as a player, like I think a player really doesn't, like they look forward to that competition. As a fan, I wouldn't want that. I want an easy game, but I don't know. Maybe players would like an easier road, but I think they're just like, hey, we're going to take what's in front of us and we're just going to play through it. And as a fan, though, I would just like to face the worst team.
I think players care a little bit. I think they know that how hard they worked in the regular season, and they should be compensated for that. Again, a 2 seed playing a 4 seed in the first round for the 4 seed and the 2 seed is not necessarily fair. But I do think they get over it really quickly because they know that it doesn't really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We got to play whoever we got to play. We don't control our schedule. That's why I always hate all the fans. This was like the Nuggets last year, right? They played the 8 seed, the 5 seed, the 7 seed, and the 8 seed to win a title. Oh, they had a weak route. Well, I don't really care. 1 and 2. They only played who they were matched up against. You can't really knock a team for playing who they played. So, yeah, I don't think the players care in the aspect that's going to affect their playing or how they're going to play. But I do think it's a little annoying. Like, you're just like, man, we tried so hard to better our standing, but we're going to play the number 2 seed even though we're a 4 seed. The Canucks, who are the 3 seed, are guaranteed to play a worse opponent if they win their series than the Stars. If the Stars win their series, even though it's a 1 versus 3, the 1 seed's going to play a harder opponent in the second round if they do end up winning their series. So it is weird how they do it.
Yeah, but I do like it, especially from an entertainment standpoint, because these are all teams that know each other, and that can add to the fieriness as a fan. I don't like, I think there's drama that kind of appeals to a fan. Like, oh, I know about the Stars and Golden Knights. You also know about the Jets and the Stars, and then currently the Jets Avalanche. They've in the same division. There is a little bit of rivalry. You can tell the players know each other, which kind of increases the environment, and to me that helps the entertainment value. And I do think it does help, like you mentioned, the 7-8 seed. 7 faces an 8 seed. Or no. Maybe it's the 5 versus 7. It may give a better product of these are two teams closely
But then,
close to each
this is
other.
an argument I remember you bringing up
Yeah.
before the Wi-Fi issue. And this was like what I was going to say. There's
Yes.
been multiple 4-5 seeds in the NBA that are sweeps and
Mhm.
2-7 games that are close. I don't think it's necessarily based on seed that decides a close matchup. It's based on how the teams fit against each other. What are their paths? Are there injuries? How do coaches perform? How do players perform? There's been many. I mean, again, the example I brought up last video that obviously didn't say is the best team in NHL history during the regular season lost to an 8 seed last year. The Bruins, statistically speaking, are the greatest team in NHL history during the regular season. Lost in the first round in 7 to the Panthers. I don't think that's because they know each other. That's not why it was a close matchup. I don't think it was because of the packs that they had. It's just the NHL has so much parity that a lot of close matchups will arise from it.
Yeah, no, and my them knowing to each other, I think it doesn't. I don't know if it really affects the play. It just affects how the players interact. Like you'll see a lot more players getting each other's faces because they know each other and they get on each other's nerves. That to me is more the entertainment value of as a fan. Oh, these guys really don't like each other, or they're really competitive against each other. Kind of in that sense.
I get what you're saying, but still, the 1 versus 8 in your example, if the 5 versus 7 is supposed to be close, the 1 versus 8 was a Game 7 series, even though they were extremely far away in the standings. While maybe a 4-5 would be a sweep, we've seen those before. I don't think it's necessarily based on how close you are in the standings that determines the closest of the series.
Got it. That's a fair point. I just think maybe better or not, it creates overall good round. Because in the NBA, some of the games it only seems like a few are close. Like the Celtics Heat game really isn't that competitive. That could be a parity. That could be a mix of parity issue. But what happens if you have the Celtics or no? Heat versus the Sixers for a first round matchup.
Would have mattered in this case because of the Jimmy Butler injury. I think maybe it's a closer series between the Heat and Celtics if both teams are fully healthy. I mean, we saw the Heat last year beat the Celtics in the conference final. So I don't think that's necessarily the most fair example to the Heat because of that matchup. If we're talking about the NBA this year, we watched the Pelicans and Thunder 2-point game was game 1. And tonight, as we're recording this, is game 2. So I don't again, it's more how the teams match up against each other more than it is just their seeds.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point. And I just really like the NHL playoff format. You and I have talked about just the Stanley Cups or just Stanley Cup playoffs is just one of, if not the best playoffs in just that environment. And it's just so fun to watch, no matter if you're a fan of the team or if you just want to see some good hockey or some entertaining hockey. Because sometimes a 7-6 game is not good hockey, but it's entertaining.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just think it's because of the parity in the league that is causing those great playoff series, not necessarily the format. I think it's more. I think no matter what, if we look back to the old format when the Kings won the title when they were an 8 seed, that was a 1-8 format. That the Kings played, they were the 8 seed and they played the 1 seed back in 2012, and that was an 8 seeded Kings that won the title in dominant fashion, where they only lost 4 games during the entire playoff run. I think it's the NHL is just that good of a product. They are so parity driven. That's why the playoffs are so good, not necessarily the playoff format. Because we've seen the playoff format, like I said, go to the NBA version, and an 8 seed won the title. I just couldn't imagine that in the NBA.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that in the NBA either. My question is, so how long has this format been in place? This format that we're talking about right now?
I think it's under 10 years.
Under 10. Yeah, I keep forgetting 2012 is not 10 years ago. It's over 10 years ago.
Let me see.
Yeah, I'll just add. I really like the idea of facing the same division opponent, even though that does mess with the seed as you're talking about.
But
To me, yeah,
let me bring up this. I know because I know we had this conversation
yeah.
in the MLB. You remember in 2021 when the two best teams in the entire MLB faced each other in the first round of the playoffs?
Yes.
Between the Giants and Dodgers? Was an amazing series. Yes. But it kind of, why are the two best teams in the sport playing each other in the first round? I don't really consider the wild card, especially back then when it was just one game, the first round. It was literally speaking, the first round was actually a series instead of just one game. We considered it then, I know you considered it then, unfair for the Dodgers and the Giants to have to play each other in the first round because they were the divisional opponents, so they couldn't be higher rated than some of those teams that are significantly worse. The 3 seed, I know, was significantly worse than the Dodgers, and because the Dodgers and Giants, 107 wins and 106 wins or 105 wins. I know then I thought that was unfair, and that's basically what this is right now.
Yeah, I remember it was a tough matchup, like, man, and it stinks as a fan to see the two great teams face off each other in the first round and not meet in the championship series, because the MLB, to me, sometimes the championship series are not great. But it always seems like the championship series are competitive in the NHL, even though the Panthers.
I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, I would disagree with that because last year the Panthers swept the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Now were a lot of games close? Yeah. But that's just because, again, the NHL is so parity driven. The Stars were down 3-0 and the Hurricanes were down 3-0 last year in the playoffs. But were those playoffs still really fun to watch? Were those games really fun to watch? Yeah, and that's just because hockey is extremely fun to watch. But if you're looking at just both teams being down 3-0 does not mean that necessarily that the conference championships were good.
Yeah, but they were entertaining, which is kind
But
of
that's the product of hockey. If you're going to tell me that the Hurricanes-Panthers series was entertaining, again, it's a sweep. The Hurricanes didn't win a game. Now, is it still fun to watch? Yes. Did I watch the majority of those games? Yes. But that's more of a hockey thing than it is anything else, in my opinion. I don't know how a sweep could be considered very competitive. I still, for example, I'll go back to the 2018 finals between the Cavs and Warriors. I thought the series was entertaining, but it was still a sweep. Did I still watch all the games? Yes. Did I think it was a good product? Sure. Some of the games were close, especially game 1 and game 4. But at the end of the day, it was a sweep. If they run that series back again, I don't think there's a different result in the winner.
Yeah, so a lot of it can be hockey, but I do think there is some format has to be considered. It's not like an all hockey thing. There has to be format. Now, could it be better? I'm not really sure. I think
the reason why I push back on the format though is because of, like I said, when the NBA and NHL had the same format. Let me put it this way: the NBA used to have this format. The format basically that we're doing right now. It's a little bit different, but the top 3 seeds were divisional winners, the 3 division winners. And so like the Mavs, who had like the second most wins in the West, were the 4 seed or 5 seed. That's happened before. So but when they did that, a lot of NBA fans pushed back because it's an unfair advantage. And that's why the NHL Players Association pushed back on this initially in 2012. And they're like, we don't want this. I couldn't find whenever it initially got put in. I think it got put in 2014. Okay. This may be the 10th year of it. But I know that for a player thinking about it, like, this is annoying. Like, you don't want to play the second best team in the conference or the second best team in the NHL in a certain instance for no reason other than it's just format. The playoffs for the NHL are going to be really good no matter what.
Yeah, I can see that. To me, it's just.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to bring up one more thing about the 2012 finals. By the way, the other team that Kings played in the final was the 6th seed. It was an 8 versus 6 in the final. There's no other sport like that. So again, an 8 versus 6, that series eventually went to 6. But those Kings lost 4 games in 2 games before the Stanley Cup final. So they won in 5. They swept and then won in 5. and then a 1-6 over a 6 seed in the final. That's NHL. That's different than the other leagues. There wouldn't be an 8 seed that loses 4 games all playoffs. What were you gonna say?
The thing is, like, we keep talking about unfair, and I don't like using that word when it's the rules. I think I've said this a lot. Like, those are the rules of the game. You gotta play with it. Like,
Players
there's
Association
nothing
has power, though. The Players Association didn't want it because they believed it would be unfair.
Yeah, but to me, if you want to be a champion, you gotta play with the cards you're dealt, and sometimes it's gonna be difficult. But to me, I just don't. I don't feel super passionate about like they need to change this. I'm like, I love the way it is now. Why change it?
So you believe that a worser team is okay playing a worser opponent? A bad team can play a bad team in the first round.
Yeah.
You're okay with that? You think that's fair?
Because those are the rules. So like, what am I gonna say? Like, change it now because of this? No, like, it may be.
They changed it to make it like.
I think they changed. I don't know the exact change, and I wasn't paying attention then. But it seems like they wanted to create more division rivalries, which would be more entertaining to a fan, because the NHL is struggling. Even though we've talked about in here, like, it's such a great product, it doesn't get as much attention as the other leagues as it should. So this could be an entertainment value, and the sports are entertaining. Like, the NFL is super entertaining and markets itself well. Now, I don't know, I wouldn't feel like changing it because I feel this is something that produces a good product for someone to watch. But if you wanted to market it different, I think there could be marketing differently. Like, oh, here are these rivalries. That's I see the market value, which is something I see the NHL needs to do, which I'm kind of taking more as a fan perspective and how do I appeal to these people?
You have to be a fan of one of those teams to truly understand the rivalry. If you just tell me there's a rivalry between these two teams, me watching it as a unbiased observer, I feel like it's sometimes hard to sense that unless you're like watching the Winnipeg Jets or something like that. If I was watching the Stars game, besides hearing that they faced each other before, I don't think this is any different than any other playoff series. I mean, they're not even division rivals. They're just rivals because they played each other twice in the conference finals. Yeah. Those rivalries can be created by just great play. For example, the Kings and Blackhawks met twice in the Western Conference Final before it changed around. The Kings and Blackhawks, who are in different sides, the Blackhawks are in the Central, while the Kings are in the Pacific. But the rivalries, I think the best rivalries are the ones that are naturally decided upon, like Cavs Warriors. That's a rivalry forever now. Celtics Lakers, rivalry forever. I don't think forcing them just because they're divisional rivals are necessarily the best choice.
You could argue that, and I see what you're saying, but I think if you're in the division, you're playing these teams a lot more. It gives more opportunities to create it, but you can also still have those natural ones, like you mentioned, Vegas and the Stars and the Cavs Warriors.
Well, let me ask you this: what's a bigger rivalry in the NFL? Chiefs Bills or Chiefs any other team in their division?
Fair. I would say Chiefs Bills, but I wonder what would a Raiders fan, and like what happens if they actually get good. Those, like, it's not like the NFL, like the teams in the divisions face each other and there are a lot of good teams. So they create a rivalry, but there's no good team in that AFC West division besides the Chiefs.
There's very few rivalries besides just the NFC East, and that may just because of the bias I have being around people who are NFC East fans. But I think it's partially true between just Packers Bears. I don't think Packers Vikings. There's kind of that, but definitely not Packers Lions. I definitely don't feel like the Packers hate towards the Lions. But a lot of those teams that have big rivalries, Again, Patriots-Chiefs, I still think is a rivalry just because of what happened between those AFC Championship games and obviously the matchups during the regular season between those teams. I think it's mostly playoffs that you see rivalries being created, and extremely late ones too, like ones that happened in the conference championship that you can't really decide based on format in any league because there's only 2 teams left, and those 2 teams will get there no matter what division they're in.
Yeah, that's a point, but that's a good point, and I think you can get there deeper, but you want to market the first round and make sure every game is watched, and I think this format allows it. And if they change it, I'm not going to be opposed to it. I'm just like, why would I change it? I'm not for they need to change it. If a player feels it's unfair, to me, it's like you can believe that a little bit, but you kind of just got to go and play the game and deal with the cards you're dealt. I'm not in favor.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, if you're a 1 seed, having to play 2, 3, 4 in a 1 is a lot different than having to play a 6, 7, 8 in an 8, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's just
there's a reason why we say that the Dirk's run is one of the hardest of all time, right?
Yeah.
But he was a 3 seed, so it makes sense because then you have to play the 2, the 1 to win it. But if he was a 1 seed, how many 1 seeds, Kevin, are considered on the hardest runs of all time? Almost none of them. The team that had maybe the hardest run, in my opinion, was the Rockets in 1995 when they were a 6 seed. So in the first round, they had to play a 3, then they had to play a 2, then they had to play a 1, and then they had to play in the finals. I think against the 1. I think the Magic were a 1 or a 2 that year. So that's what the hardest roads in the NBA are not by 1 seed. And I don't think they should be. If you play worse in the regular season, that should affect your seeding, your matchup, how hard you have to work to be a champion. But what the NHL is doing, I think it lessens the importance of the regular season. It's a big reason why I feel like teams like Vegas can be like, you know what, we're just going to put players on LTIR. Because it doesn't really matter what seed we're going to get. We're going to face the hardest team. If we're the best team, we're going to play one of the harder teams anyway. If we're the 2 seed in our division, we may play the 4 seed no matter what. Well, if we get the 8 seed, okay, we're going to play the 1 seed instead of the 2 seed. Okay. Does it really matter at that point? I don't think so.
I think in some areas, like, it may happen, but seems like it is a continuous thing. But the regular season is still teams still try. I would only be upset and be like, if you need to change it, if it harms the regular season product. Now, if teams are not, if we kind of want to bring up the NBA again, if teams are like with the play-in, they don't really care if they're in play-in like the Heat, then I'm like, okay, change the format. Like I've said, change the NBA format because it doesn't help the product of the regular season. I don't see the NHL regular season product suffering because of this format, like the NBA season, in my opinion, suffers. Because if you're doing a play-in, why should you care about getting that 6 seed if so many teams get in the playoffs? And we've seen teams go on runs. Like we've seen some teams just don't care about the play-in. They're like, I'll do it. Like the Hawks said they didn't need to try because of the play-in.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I feel like those maybe not at the Penguins, Red Wings, Capitals, all that right there. But I do think there's a big reason why Vegas didn't really care about getting the difference between those in games where they lose to the Ducks by 3 for no reason. I don't think they really cared. I don't think that was a game that they were really worried about because it doesn't really matter. Even though it gets them a higher seed, even though they play an easier opponent. They know that the way the playoff schedule was around, it's going to be like that no matter what.
And they may have not wanted to face the Oilers. That could be possible. They may have liked their chances against Dallas.
Yeah. But I think that if you can just decide that because of how the playoff schedule is, the difference in the difference would be the 7 versus the 8. They would have to play the Jets or the Stars. It wouldn't be the difference is a 5 versus a 1 just by getting 1 point.
Yeah. And there's that. But to me, I like this playoff format. I don't really see a need to change. I understand what you're saying. I just don't feel the same way about it.
Yeah, we'll see if they end up changing it. I know there's been discussions about it before because I know fans get mad at it, and understandably so. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I can understand a fan being mad at it. Like, I'm not happy the Stars are facing Vegas as their way of getting number 1 seed, but to me,
They would play Vegas no matter what the playoff format is.
Yeah, that's true. But like, I can understand fans getting upset, but I'm like, it's more about like if this is going to hurt the regular season product, that's when I get worried. But I'll toss this over to you to let you close it out.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Who do you agree with? Do you agree with me that the playoff format should be changed, or Kevin that it doesn't need to? Thank you guys for listening.